Hi everyone. I deem it a great pleasure of taking this responsibility to introduce myself. I'm Raghu, Assistant Professor of English from School of Sciences and Humanities, SR University, which is located in Warangal, Telangana. You all know that I have started a series of lectures on Indian knowledge system, and I have completed few video lectures also. So let us recapitulate whatever we have already discussed in the previous videos. After that, we will move on to the next lecture. First, lesson number 1. The basic view of Indian knowledge system. So let us recapitulate whatever the key ideas we have discussed under the canopy of lesson number 1. 4 important points we had a discussion. One is, what is IKS? What are the key features of IKS? Sources of knowledge during ancient times, and what are the significant contributions in ancient India by our ancestors. So these are the key important points we had a discussion in the previous lectures. So let us recapitulate briefly for a better understanding. Let's proceed to further after. What is IKS? The knowledge and the wisdom which has been developed during the ancient times is called IKS, Indian Knowledge System. It is a responsibility of every Indian citizen to have a basic understanding on ancient knowledge. Let's proceed to the next point. What are the key features of IKS? There are 4 important key features we had a discussion. One is holistic. What it means? During the ancient times, our ancestors firmly believed that everything in this universe is interconnected and interrelated. Either the species on the earth, nature, universe, humans, all are interdepending on each other. The best example I have already given, for example, if you take the trees, which are providing oxygen, which is an essential element to the humans to survive on this earth. On the other side of the coin, we are releasing carbon dioxide, which is essential for the trees to survive. So in such a way, we are depending on each other in this earth, and which means holistic. And the second one, practical. And this quality is related to ancient education. Our ancestors firmly believed that they don't give much priority for theoretical learning, rather than they had given much more importance to practical learning. Experimental learning has given utmost priority during the ancient times. It means learning by doing, learning through actions. Either it is farming, either it is farming, architecture, or else fighting, warfare, everything they do with the practice. That is one of the important key features of Indian knowledge system pertaining to education. And another important quality regarding IKS is concerned, ethical, moral. Our ancestors firmly believed that education is the manifestation of attitude. It means the cultivation of good behavior. Unfortunately, in the modern civilization, or even in the recent times, if you observe carefully, even in the news channels, there was a small boy, a school boy, who was shooting a teacher. That means we are forgetting our moral values. Teacher is treated as a god in the ancient times, but now in the modern times, he is the victim of the society. And students are not giving value to them, especially at the time of online classes during the time of Corona. There are many teachers faced many number of problems from the students during the online classes. But in the ancient times, actually, they had given utmost priority for ethical values, cultivation of behavior of the students. Rather than just inducing the knowledge to the students, they had given utmost priority to cultivate a good behavior in the students to make them good citizens of the society. That is another important quality of Indian education system during the ancient times. And another significant quality pertaining to IKS is nature friendly. Our ancestors gave utmost priority for nature. They protect the nature. They have developed small groves such as small forests and which are treated as god and goddess in the ancient times. In such a way, they have given utmost priority to the nature. They love to live with the nature. They love to protect the nature. But in the modern civilization, in the name of industrialization and development, we are cutting the trees. We are destructing the nature. That is why it leads to many health issues. It leads to pollution and global warming. One of the best examples is the situation of Delhi. So the people who were living with the nature, they were always happy and calm and peaceful. But whenever we were away from the nature, thinking that it is the development, then we are leading to the stage of destruction. At least we need to realize it now. That's the reason it is a responsibility of everyone. What kind of a lifestyle our ancestors had led, we should understand it. Because they were very happy, they were very healthy, they were very peaceful for many number of years. But if you see the modern times, actually, there are many people have been suffering with health issues even in the young age because of this polluted world. Who are responsible for that? We are responsible for that in the name of development and industrialization. What is another point? We had a discussion under the canopy of lesson number 1. What are the different sources of knowledge they had in the ancient times? They had 4 important sources. One is Vedas, second one is Upanishads, and third one is Puranas, and fourth one is epics such as Ramayana and Mahabharata. Ultimately, the importance of these 4 categories, they induce moral values, ethical values, and the right way of living to the public in the ancient times. And the fourth one, significant contributions in ancient India. There are many modern philosophers used to question the knowledge of ancient people. What did they contribute to the modern civilization? Can you at least imagine the modern civilization without the ancient knowledge? Impossible. I have already mentioned even in the previous videos also, if you really want to understand the modern knowledge, you can have a better understanding by observing through the lens of ancient India. We are constructing the modern civilization on the roots of ancient civilization. That is the fact everyone has to understand. There are many examples for that. For example, if you take health and wellness, during the ancient times, our ancestors firmly believed that healthy body gives healthy mind. That's why they had introduced yoga. They did many yogasanas. If you are physically fit, they firmly believe that you are mentally and psychologically also fit. And their contribution to mathematics, which is remarkable. Can we imagine the modern mathematics without having a zero, which was invented by one of our ancestors, Aryabhatta? Can you at least imagine that? And the next one, if you take trading, they started trading long years ago, thousands of years ago. They exported gold to the foreign countries during the time. And not only that, in the name of trading, actually, they started using coins, silver coins, copper coins for doing trading, and which is a base for the modern currency in the world. We cannot forget ancient knowledge and their contributions. Not only that, we are talking something about the space research in the global civilization, but which was started by our Indian ancestors thousands of years ago, who started investigating our universe thousands of years ago, and who proposed 2 important and significant theories to the globe. What are the 2 theories? Geocentric theory and heliocentric theory. Both the theories are talking something about the universe only. And the geocentric theory was believed by ancient people for thousands of years ago. For many years, they believed it. What is the main concept of geocentric theory. It believes that Earth is the center of the universe. All the planets, including the sun, revolve around the Earth. It was a belief, and people believed it for thousands of years. But later it proved wrong, of course. Another theory came to existence that is called heliocentric theory, which means Earth is not the center of the universe, sun is the center of the universe, all the planets are revolving around the sun, including the Earth. That is called heliocentric theory. And even now, the modern civilized people who are believing heliocentric theory only. And which is the base? Our ancient knowledge is the base. You know, when the people were traveling in the sea, actually, they didn't have any kind of technological compass. By observing the position of the stars, they used to travel. By observing the seasons, they did farming. By observing the position of the stars, they have done farming at the time. And they are observing the time by observing the sun and all. So how does it possible? They lived with the nature, and through the nature, they achieved everything. So that's why we cannot imagine the modern civilization without ancient India. So this is in brief about lesson number 1. Lesson number 2, with the title Modes of Knowledge Transmission. Let us recapitulate the key ideas. What are the different modes of knowledge transmission we had in ancient times? We discussed 10 different modes of knowledge transmission. Let's have a brief discussion on them. Number 1, Guru Sishya Parampara, which is one of the best ways in the ancient times to transmit the valuable knowledge to the others in the ancient times. That is nothing but learning from a teacher. If the Sishya would like to learn from the Guru, the Sishya would go to the Gurukulas and request the Gurus to learn something from them. If the Gurus have accepted their request, the Sishyas would live with the Gurus in the Gurukulas and learn from them. That is one of the best ways of knowledge transmission in ancient India, learning from a teacher. And the second important modes of knowledge transmission is learning by listening, oral tradition, that is through songs. Our ancestors firmly believed that through the songs, knowledge can be easily transmitted to the group of people, and it can be registered for a long period of time in the minds of the people. One of the best examples are nothing but Harikathas during the time. So whatever the mythological stories were there and moral stories were there, which were narrated to the group of people through Harikathas. Even now at the time of festivals also we did the same, and we are following the tradition even in the modern civilization. And the third one, learning by writing. Our ancestors, later years, they believed it. Whatever the knowledge they had, the precious knowledge they had, it has to reach to the next generations. That's why they started writing their knowledge in the form of manuscripts. The precious knowledge, whatever they had, they have written on the palm leaves, and which are the base for our ancient knowledge. And Ayurveda, everything had been written on the palm leaves. And we are utilizing that knowledge now to treat the patients in Ayurveda. And the fourth one, performing arts as learning. The dance forms, singing, songs. So the different arts have been used to convey the important information to the group of people in the ancient times. There are many dance forms have been originated in the ancient times, and through that, they conveyed the valuable information to the group of people, because rather than reading some information from the books actually, but if you witness that in the form of an art, which can be remembered for a long time, that was a strategy and technique our ancestors believed. And the fifth one is dialogue and debate, which is not a new one, even to the modern civilization. The people who are going for campus placement drives, actually, one of the important rounds in the campus placement drive is a debate in the modern civilization. Through that, they are trying to test their critical thinking, logical thinking, communication skills, which had been started in Gurukulas thousands of years ago by our Gurus, our ancestors. In Gurukulas, they are going to conduct some debates on different topics to the students so that they are going to share their knowledge to each other. Through that, they are going to test their critical thinking and logical thinking. And the sixth one is observation and imitation. One of the best examples is nothing but the story of Ekalavya. Dronacharya rejected to take him as a student because he doesn't belong to king's community. But he doesn't want to leave it. By observing Dronacharya teachings from a far distance, he has learned archery and became as an expert in that. It was possible through observation and imitation to Ekalavya, and he became as an expert. That is one of the ways in ancient times to learn something from gurus. Observation and imitation. Pilgrimages and travel learning. So there are many ancestors who are very much interested to go to the different places in the name of pilgrimages, so that they can share their culture, they can share their knowledge among different people, and different cultures can be understood to each other. Not only that, whatever the knowledge they had, they are going to transmit the knowledge to the different people when they are meeting each other. Travel is one of the best ways of transmitting the knowledge in the ancient times. Community-based learning, that is another mode of knowledge transmission. For example, if you take villages during the time, the elderly personalities and the leaders in the villages, especially at the time of special occasions or festivals, they gathered the group of students over there, group of public over there, and they used to teach them what is our culture, how to do the rituals and all. That is why even in the modern civilization, we are doing our pujas and rituals individually without taking the help of the priest also. How does it possible? Because whatever the traditions they had, it has been transferred to the next generations. And we are implementing the same, even in the modern civilization. That's why ancient knowledge is precious. Their contributions to the modern civilization is really remarkable and unquestionable. Symbolism and visual representation. The best examples are nothing but temples. The knowledge, the precious knowledge, what they had in the ancient times has been carved on the walls of the temples. How did they live? What kind of lifestyle they had followed? The birth process, the knowledge they had, everything had been carved on the temple walls. If you observe the ancient temples, actually, if you visit them, you can understand what kind of knowledge they had in the ancient time and how did they carve it on the walls of the temples. And the last one, the another important mode of knowledge transmission is mnemonic technique, which means our ancestors firmly believed that through drilling of rhymes, the knowledge can be transmitted. They followed this technique to induce the moral values in the public during the time by making them to practice rhymes. The best example is nothing but even the same strategy and technique our modern civilization and the global civilization also followed. If you take a best example, the well-known rhyme called Johnny Johnny yes Papa, eating sugar no Papa. We are thinking that it is just an English rhyme, but what is the meaning behind it? It is suggesting that too much of eating of sugar is not good for health. And this technique and this strategy had been adopted by our ancient times. This is in brief about lesson number 2, the modes of knowledge transmission in ancient India. The third one, Vedic corpus, the foundations of Indian wisdom. What is Vedic corpus? Well, the knowledge and the wisdom which has been there in the ancient times had been written in the form of 4 volumes or books. That is called Vedic corpus. It includes 4 Vedas. What are the 4 Vedas we have? Rig Veda, Yajurveda, Samaveda, Atharva Veda. What is Rig Veda? Rig Veda is the book of hymns or songs which were written thousands of years ago. Rig Veda is a book of lyrical songs, and it talks about universe, nature, how to lead a good life in the ancient times. That is in brief about Rig Veda. Yajurveda, it is a special instruction book for doing Hindu rituals and prayers. It is a book of rituals and pujas. how to perform the puja in a step-by-step process, how to perform the prayers to the God. Everything was explained in a very detailed and step-by-step process, and that book is named as, that Veda is named as Yajurveda. What is Samaveda? The Veda of songs and music. It has a relation with Rigveda. What did I say about Rigveda? Rigveda is about the lyrical songs. So whatever the lyrics were there in Rigveda, and adding music to that, they made as prayer songs, and which are used at the time of rituals and pujas. So that is called Samaveda. It is a book of musical songs. Let us take the modern example actually. For example, there is a movie. Okay. In that movie, actually, lyricist will be there. What is the duty of a lyricist? He will write some lyrics. And whatever the lyrics have been written by the lyricist, and the music director is adding music to that and make them to the beautiful melodious songs. In such a way, Rigveda provides the lyrics, and Samaveda add music to that and make it like a prayer song, and which are generally used at the time of rituals and pujas. That is called Samaveda. And Atharva Veda, it teaches about life. It is almost like a constitution of how to live in the ancient times, how to live happily, how to make our life healthy, peaceful. All these things, all these guidelines have been given in Atharva Veda. That's why we can say that these 4 books are the wisdom of our ancient knowledge. And everyone has a responsibility to have a knowledge on them. And this is in brief about lesson number 3, Vedic corpus. Lesson number 4, exploring Vedangas and Upavedas. So what are the key points? We had a discussion. Number 1, relationship among Vedas, Vedangas and Upavedas. Did you remember, is there any relationship? Yes, there is a relationship. So Vedas are the wisdom and the knowledge of the ancient times. But if you want to read the Vedas and understand the Vedas, we require Vedangas. So Vedangas are the tools, the 6 tools during the ancient times, which help us to understand the information and knowledge in Vedas. For example, you would like to learn English language. So in the process of learning English language, how did you learn? You're going to focus on vocabulary, pronunciation, grammar, sentence formation. These are all the different tools you use to learn English language, right? Similarly, if you want to learn Vedas, if you want to understand the information in the Vedas, these Vedangas help us to understand the information in a better way. How many Vedangas we have? There are 6 tools of Vedangas we have, which help us to understand the Vedas in a better manner. Let us introduce all the 6 tools. One is Siksha, which means phonetics, which focuses on pronunciation, how to pronounce the words correctly in Vedas. Next one, Vyakarana, which means grammar, correct use of language. And third one, Nirukta, etymology, which means vocabulary, the meanings of words, which help us to understand the meanings of information in Vedas. And Chandas, rhythm and poetic style. And Kalpa, rituals, the rules of rituals, what kind of rituals they had followed, what kind of step-by-step analysis they had, everything has been explained. And Jyotisha, it is about astronomy and astrology. All these tools which help us to understand the information and knowledge in Vedas. And they are called Vedangas. That is the relationship between Vedas and Vedangas. So Vedas are nothing but the books of knowledge and wisdom. Whatever the knowledge and wisdom prescribed in Vedas, if you want to understand that information, we need Vedangas, which are the tools of learning information in Vedas. And the third one is Upavedas. What does it mean by Upavedas? Whatever the information you have acquired, that information you need to practically apply that in the real-time situation. That is nothing but practical exposure. Whatever the theory you have learned from Vedas, you need to practically apply that in the real-time situation. They are called, the practical tools are called, the skills are called Upavedas. So Upavedas are nothing but skill enhancement. Whatever the theoretical knowledge you have acquired, that you need to put it into practice through Upavedas. For example, if you take Ayurveda, the science of health and medicine, that means whatever the theory you have learned regarding the treatment of medicine is concerned in Ayurveda, you are going to apply that to the patients to treat some diseases there by using the method of Ayurveda. It is a skill. That skill you need to develop and enhance. That is called Upaveda. Dhanurveda, it is a skill of archery and sword fight. How to fight at the time of warfare. How to leave the arrows. So all the skills you are going to learn in the name of Dhanurveda. Gandharva Veda, it is something related to music, dance, singing and arts. Okay, how to play flute, tabla, how to sing a song. Okay, how to perform different dance forms, Bharatanatyam, Kathakali, Kuchipudi or whatever. How to perform different dance forms. So, whatever the theoretical knowledge you had, that you need to put it into practice in the real-time situation. They are called Upavedas. Sthapatya Veda, it is something about architecture and engineering. Ancient monuments are the best examples of intellectual architecture of our ancient people. Because the present monuments pertaining to ancient times are the replicas of their intelligence, intellectual capability in their architecture and engineering. So they had such a kind of a skill. So acquiring those skills are called Upavedas. So let me make it very clear. So Vedas are nothing but the wisdom of knowledge. The wisdom and the knowledge which has been prescribed in the form of 4 books is called Vedas. So in the process of understanding the information in Vedas, we need to rely on Vedangas, which are the 6 tools, help us to understand the information in Vedas in a better way. And Upavedas, whatever the information you have learned from Vedas, with the help of Vedangas, that you need to put it into practice in the real-time situation, those skills are called Upavedas. So that is the relationship among Vedas, Vedangas, and Upavedas. It is in brief about lesson number 4, exploring Vedangas and Upavedas. Lesson number 5, classical Indian philosophical schools. An overview. There were 6 schools proposed by our ancestors during the ancient time or during ancient India. Every school has its own significance. For example, if you take the school of Nyaya, which focuses on logic and reasoning, sage Gautama has established a school during the ancient time. It teaches the students the different ways of identifying the truth. For example, there was a crime. How to identify the truth behind the crime? They suggested 4 ways to identify the truth, and which were called as pramāṇas. So what does it mean by pramāṇas? The pramāṇas are the different ways to identify the truth if there is a crime. So what is the first pramāṇa? Pratyakṣa. You come to conclusion, what is the truth? That is through Pratyakṣa, that means perception. 5 senses you need to rely. Either you can smell it, or else you can taste it, or else you can see it directly. Then only you can believe that it is a truth. That is one way of identifying the truth. That is pramāṇa 1. What is pramāṇa 2? Anumāna is another way of identifying the truth. That is nothing but guessing from the clue. Having some kind of suspicious on somebody based on the clue. For example, there was a smoke on the hill. The smoke is a clue to come to the conclusion or the truth that there is a fire. Without the fire, how can you get the smoke? So smoke acts like a clue. So in the name of identifying, in the process of identifying the truth, you have to look for clues. The clues which will help us to identify the truth behind it. That is called Anumāna, which is another pramāṇa. And the third pramāṇa is Upamāna, comparing with something which you already know. For example, somebody has witnessed something. He was describing, sir, that object looks like a horse. But it is not exactly horse actually. It has white and black stripes. That means what is that? It is a zebra. How he compared? He compared with the information which is already known to you. What is the information which is already known to you? You already know about horse. And that animal also looked like a horse. That's why he started comparing for giving you better understanding about the truth. That is called Upamāna. And Śabda, verbal testimony, learning from a trustworthy person. Somebody might have witnessed the crime. If you feel that he is a trustworthy person, you can believe and proceed further. So these are all the 4 different logical ways suggested by says Gupta from the school called Nyaya to identify the truth behind it. That is in brief about Nyaya school. What is the second one? Vaisheshika school. It was proposed by says Kannada. What is this school about? So according to says Kannada, the world has been developed through atoms. And he strongly believed that atoms are eternal. Okay, the world is created with atoms. Atoms are nothing but small particles. And we should not see the world as single entity. We have to see the world into different segments and parts. And we need to study that. Then only we can understand the world. That is what Vaisheshika school suggests. For example, there is a plastic toy. After playing with the toy, actually the toy was broken. The toy shape was damaged actually. Okay, which is not permanent. Shape is not permanent. But atom is permanent. That means the plastic is permanent. What is going to do? What we are going to do with the broken toy? And again we recycle it and we can make it like another toy. So atoms are eternal and the remaining things are temporary. That is what Vaisheshika school always suggests. So if you want to understand the world, you have to see the world into 2 different segments and different atoms. Every atom you need to study in a separate way and which becomes eternal. That is what Vaisheshika school suggests. And third one, Samkhya school, which was proposed by says Kapila. He said the whole world is made up of 2 main things. One is Purusha, which is nothing but soul. And Prakriti, which is nothing but nature or material. Soul is permanent, material is temporary. For example, body is a material, which is temporary. Okay, but it has no value without the soul. Similarly, soul has no value without the body. So whenever we have Purusha and Prakriti together, this is what universe. And both are depending on each other. It is a dualism. It is a dualism, which was proposed by says Kapila. And the 4th school is Yoga school. I have already mentioned even in the previous lecture. Our ancestors firmly believed that healthy body gives healthy mind. If you are physically fit, mentally fit, psychologically fit, they gave utmost priority for yoga, a physical fitness that makes us to be happy and peaceful. And it was proposed by Saint Patanjali. And yoga helps us to lead a happy life without having any stress. And you will have a self-control. That is what yoga school always try to teach us. And the 5th school is Purva Mimasa school. It is a school of rituals and dharma. It was proposed by Rishi Jaimani. The school teaches if you do our duties, that is nothing but dharmas, correctly, we get good results. So we need to follow the nature, the order of the nature, the guidelines of the nature, the morals of the nature. If you strictly abide to the rules of the nature, the orders of the nature, we will have a good results. Whenever you try to violate the orders of the nature, the rules of the nature, it leads to destruction. That's an example. The modern civilization is an example. Whenever we started away from the nature, actually, there are many issues have been created in the name of development, actually. Pollution is there. Global warming is there. Delhi is the best example for that. People are struggling hard to live there. They are banning some petrol and diesel vehicles also. I came to know that in the recent time. And who created this mess? Humans, in the name of development and industrialization. But the people, our ancestors who lived with the nature, they had a happy life. They lived more than 100 years. But now, even the youngsters have been facing many number of issues. And cancer, it becomes one of the deadly diseases in the recent times. And the sixth one is Vedanta school. It is a school of metaphysics and ultimate truth. It was proposed by sage Vyasa because he wrote the Brahma Sutras, also called Vedanta Sutras, which form the main textbook that is called Vedanta, which is the base of this school. Now, let's proceed with the topic Logic and Epistemology in Indian Philosophy under the canopy of lesson number 6. Let's see what is logic in Indian philosophy. If you remember that in the previous lectures, we have already discussed about logic. I don't know whether you remember it or not. When we were talking something about classical schools of ancient times, there is a school called Nyaya School, which talks about logic and reasoning. So let's have a detailed discussion now. What is logic? Logic is a study of right thinking. So if you want to think correctly, you should have a logical thinking. So logic helps us to think in a right way. That is called logic. It gives the ability to analyze the situation in a right way so that you can come to the right conclusion. We have already discussed that if there was a crime, so you need to come to the logical conclusion to identify the truth behind it. If you don't have a logical thinking, you cannot come to the right conclusions. So the logic which will help us to think about the situation in a right way, that is called logical thinking. And this is a logic which we have already discussed in Nyaya School that I have already mentioned initially. So 6 classical schools, we already had a discussion in a very detailed manner in the previous video lecture. One of those schools is Nyaya School, which talks about logic and reasoning. So the logic which will help us to identify the correct answers by analyzing the situations with proper reasoning. By analyzing the situations with proper reasoning. So you should be able to analyze the situations correctly with proper reasoning so that you can come to the right conclusions, so that you can be able to identify the right truth behind it. I have given an example in the form of a statement. The ground is wet. So if there is a statement or if there is a situation like the ground is wet, and immediately it raises a question, why ground is wet? Then you have to think about the situation logically and find the reason behind it. So what are the possible reasons there? Why ground is wet? Because it is raining. That is the reason the ground is wet. This is called logical thinking. There are some other possibilities also there. Someone might have washed the ground. Because of that, the ground is wet. A water pipe got leaked. Maybe because of that, the ground is wet. Kids might have played with the water. That is the reason the ground is wet. There are many possibilities. This kind of a thinking is called logical thinking. So that you can able to come to the right conclusion, so that you can able to identify the right truth behind it. That is called logical thinking. So during the ancient times, actually, our ancestors, especially the gurus, always teaches. The gurus always teach logical thinking and critical thinking to the sishyas in different gurukulas. So that is in brief about logical thinking. The logic teaches us to check carefully before making to conclusions. So before coming to the conclusions, actually the logical thinking will make us to think carefully and correctly so that you can come to the right conclusion. So you should have a logical thinking before coming to the conclusion. Don't blindly say something or don't blindly pass a statements on something. So every student, every person has to learn this kind of logical thinking that was proposed in the ancient times. Because we should not blindly judge anything. We should not blindly come to the conclusions without analyzing the situations with proper reasons. Okay, so during the ancient times, our ancestors have discussed about logic in a very detailed manner. In addition to that, the Nyaya school has proposed different steps for logical thinking. So let us see what are the steps proposed by Nyaya school. Nyaya school has proposed 5 steps of logical thinking, which is addressed or called as syllogism. So the Nyaya school, which is one of the classical schools in the ancient times, has proposed 5 steps of logical thinking, and those 5 steps of logical thinking is called syllogism. Let us see what are the 5 steps proposed by Nyaya school. Step number 1, Pratijñā, which is called as statement. What is a statement there? There is fire on the hill. That is a statement. And what is the reason behind it? You need to go to the next step to find the truth. What is the next step to find the truth? Hetu. That is nothing but identifying the clue or the reason behind it. What is the clue or the reason behind it? Because there is a smoke. How do you say that there is a fire on the hill? Because I found a clue there and I have a reason for that. What is that reason? There is a smoke on the hill. How smoke is related to fire? Then you are going to give Udāharaṇa. That is an example. What is an example you are giving to convince them there is a fire on the hill? Whenever in my observation, while I was working in the kitchen actually, while I was working in the kitchen, there is a fire. The fire leads to smoke. Okay, this is an example. So whenever there is a fire, there is a possibility for smoke. And which I observed in the kitchen. I'm giving an example to convince my logic. It is right. And now I have to apply that to the situation. Upanaya, which means application. How to apply that? The hill has a smoke like the kitchen. I have already given an example. Okay, with my previous knowledge and observation, while I was doing some work in the kitchen, actually, there is a fire. Because of the fire, there is a smoke. I have given an example and applying that example to the real-time situation. As how in the kitchen in the fire, even on the hill also there might be a fire because there is a smoke. That is the way I'm applying the situation. And finally, Nigamana, conclusion. There is a fire on the hill. So these are the 5 steps have proposed by Nyaya school for logical thinking. So our ancestors are suggesting us don't try to come to the conclusions blindly unless and until analyzing them with proper reasons. Okay, so these are the 5 steps proposed by Nyaya school to come to the right conclusions. What are the 5 steps? Let us repeat them once again. Pratijñā, which means statement, which followed by Hetu, identifying the right clue and reason behind it. Okay, to convince the other people your reason is correct, you need an example, the example of kitchen which is there a fire. And Upanaya, so whatever the example you have given, that you need to apply that to the real-time situation. And finally, you need to come to the conclusion Nigamana. So that you come to the conclusion that there is a fire on the hill. These are the 5 steps have proposed by Nyaya school. I've given a small activity here. I'm just giving 1 minute time. You can do this activity, please. What are the directions I have given? Match the given definitions. I have given some definitions in the form of square boxes actually. And you need to identify appropriate options which are given in the oval shapes. So I'm just giving 1 minute time. Try to apply your logical thinking to finish this activity. Just 1 minute. I'm repeating for your understanding. What is box number 1 or definition 1? Thinking something is true, but it may or may not be true. This is definition 1. In the meantime, you can think the right answers. Definition number 2, box number 2. Not sure whether something is true or false. Not sure whether something is true or false. And the third definition or box, not knowing at all. Not knowing at all. I'm going to display the answers. You can check your responses. Thinking something is true, but it may or may not be true. I'm thinking that something is true, but my thinking may be right or may not be right. In the given 3 options, what is the right one? Is it an ignorance, or is it a doubt, or is it my belief? What may be the right answer? It is my belief. Belief may not be correct all the time. Sometimes it may be right, it may not be right too. The second option, not sure whether something is true or false. I'm not sure whether something is true or false. I'm in a dilemma, whether it is true or false. I'm still in a dilemma. So what is the right word for that? It is a doubt. I'm still in a dilemma whether it is true or false. And only one option left, not knowing at all. It is a sign of ignorance. So this way of thinking is called logical thinking. One should have good logical thinking to find the right truth behind it, or to come to the right conclusions with proper analysis and with proper reasoning. And there is a term called epistemology. Do you know the meaning of the word or the term epistemology? Let's see that. Epistemology is nothing but the study of knowledge. In the previous lectures, we already had a detailed discussion on Vedas. So during the ancient times, the Vedas are the repository of wisdom. The Vedas are the repository of wisdom. We have to acquire the knowledge in Vedas. That is a Herculean task in the ancient times. So epistemology asks the questions, what is knowledge? How do we get that knowledge? Either from Vedas, Upavedas, or else Puranas. How do we get that knowledge? And how do we justify our beliefs? So whatever the beliefs we have, we already had a discussion, what is a belief? I'm thinking that something is true, but I'm not sure whether it is right or wrong. That is called belief. So how do you justify your beliefs? I'm thinking in a right way. So this is called epistemology. What are the limits of human knowledge? Is there any end for the human knowledge? Or which is unlimited, which has no end? So thinking about all these aspects together, we call it as epistemology. In short, we can say that the study of knowledge. That is called epistemology. And let's come to the Nyaya school, which has suggested 6 major themes of logic or knowledge, which are called pramāṇas. I don't know whether you remember it or not. In the previous video lecture, we already had a discussion on pramāṇas when we were discussing something about Nyaya school. So let us rediscuss them for a better understanding. So what are the 6 major themes of logic or 6 steps of logic suggested by Nyaya school to come to the right conclusions or to identify the truth behind something? And the first one, which is quite familiar to all of you, Pratyakṣa. Experiencing something through 5 senses so that you can come to the right conclusion. That is one method of coming to the logical conclusion, relying on 5 senses. What are the 5 senses we have? We can come to the conclusion by seeing it directly. We can come to the conclusion by hearing something, from someone. Okay, or we can come to the conclusion or identify the truth by touching it physically. Or we can come to the conclusion by tasting it directly and personally taste it so that you can come to the conclusion and you can smell it. So, relying on 5 senses and coming to the truth or identifying the truth is called Pratyakṣa, which means relying on perceptions, experiencing the 5 senses, and through that you can identify the truth. I've already given an example. The mango is sweet. How do you know that the mango is sweet? Because I taste it. So I'm relying on one of the 5 senses, taste. I already have eaten that and I taste it so that I can say it is sweet. So relying on one of the 5 senses and so that I can come to the right conclusion. And that step is called Pratyakṣa. And second one, Anumāna, suspicious behavior. What is the meaning of it? Guessing for clues. If something has happened, you need to look for clues and find the proper reasoning behind it. Inference. Example that we have already discussed just now. You see smoke on a hill. You have observed that there was a smoke on the hill. And immediately you can come to the conclusion with that clue, there might be a fire. Without the fire, how can you get the smoke? So, smoke is a clue. So, that is called Anumāna. Inference. And the third one, Upamāna, comparing with something you already know. Comparing with something already know. Someone has already mentioned that I found an animal in the forest, which looks so beautiful. What is that animal? Someone has asked. Then he was trying to explain. It looks like a horse. Why he is comparing? Because they know horse. They don't know this animal, but he was trying to describe that animal, okay, to convince them I have really seen that in the forest. But how to describe it? He's comparing. He's comparing with the known object or the known animal. What is that known animal? They know very well about the horse. That's why they're comparing. It looks like a horse, but it is not horse. Why? Because it has white and black stripes, which makes it so beautiful when compared to horse. That's an animal I have seen, but which is not a horse. It looks like a horse. It is quite similar like a horse, but it is not horse. So in that way, by comparing something, you can try to give the answers or try to give the right solutions. Śabda, verbal testimony. That means what? Learning something or knowing something from a trustworthy person. There was a crime and someone might have witnessed it. And that witness person, you know him very well. He's really a genuine person, an authentic person. So that's why you're trusting him. Yes, whatever he said is right. Because you know him very well for many years. That's why you had a trust on him. And coming to the conclusion by listening to his words, that is called Śabda, the verbal evidence from a trustworthy person. And the fifth one is Arthāpatti, which means presumption, identifying the hidden cause behind it. The earth goes around the sun because she is a reliable source. Who said this? The teacher said that the earth goes around the sun. If someone has said it, I don't believe. But the teacher is saying that the earth goes around the sun. That is called Śabda, because you are listening to that from the trustworthy person. Coming to the Arthāpatti, presumption, which is a hidden cause, which means we guess something must be true because of the situation, even if we don't directly see it. We guess something must be true. You're thinking that it might be true because of the analyzation of situation, but you didn't see that directly. A man is, example I have already given, a man is always getting fatter, but no one has seen that he was eating too much. But how he is getting obese? And there is an assumption by you. What is that assumption? He must be eating secretly somewhere. That's an assumption. That is called Arthāpatti. Presuming something or assuming something and identifying the hidden cause behind it. And the sixth one is Anupalabdhi, knowledge of absence. How do you know that the person is absent? Identifying that something is not there. How do you know? For example, you look into the staff room. Generally, if the teacher is present, the teacher's things or articles would be there on the table, but which are not there. And based on that, you can come to the conclusion that the teacher might be on leave because his things are not there on the table. This is called the knowledge of absence, and coming to the conclusion. So these are all the 6 major themes of logical knowledge proposed by Nyaya School for logical thinking, which are called pramāṇas. Let me repeat them. Pratyakṣa, which means perception. Anumāna, which means guessing the clues. And Upamāna, comparing something and coming to the conclusion. Śabda, learning something from a trustworthy person or knowing something from a trustworthy person. And Arthāpatti, that is nothing but presumption or assuming something, assuming the hidden cause of something. And Anupalabdhi, the knowledge of absence. How do you know that something is absent? So you are trying to identify and analyzing the situation. So this is about the 6th lesson in a brief manner. Thank you one and all for watching. Let's move on to the another lesson.